On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that I don't look or sound as bad as I feel. But I have been very ill for the last 3 or 4 days. I caught a very nasty bout of food poisoning on Saturday, and it's now Wednesday, and it's the first day I've come downstairs since then. But the show must go on, as they say, and this is the show, so it must be going on. I always like it when Mr. John gets philosophical like that. However, I think you will all agree that it would have worked better if he'd been dressed as Freddie Mercury. No, Hennis, even for the sake of this estimable show, I'm not cavorting around wearing a string vest and a leather-peaked cap.
I really like the old credits.
So, what do we have in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, in this episode we go to Loch Ness, we then come away from Loch Ness and go to East Anglia for a rather intriguing big cat report, and then we go back to Loch Ness again. And if you stay to the end, you'll find out why all the newspaper reports, which currently are claiming that scientists have proved the existence of the Loch Ness Monsters, are talking nonsense. Oh yes, and we're also talking about the voice of a dead penguin.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. As regular viewers will, I'm sure, know, but I keep on hoping that some of you watching are going to be new viewers, and so I have to explain it all to you. I come over here on YouTube every Saturday afternoon at 3 and every Wednesday evening at 5, and I present a enlightening, entertaining, innovating and all sorts of educational, as the thing is, and other things beginning with E, a potpourri of hard science, weird shit, and all sorts of other strange things that vaguely go under the category of surreality. Now, my old friend Mark Rains, who is a regular contributor to the show, pointed out this week that the Departure Lounge featured somebody very poignant and of importance to cryptozoological researchers, or at least people like me who like looking at animated cartoons about penguins. Pingu was an animated program for children which was made with stop-motion animation and which lasted for 6 series in the late 1980s. I remember when I was in my unhappy final time as a nurse, I used to watch Pingu on the television in the ward each morning, and it would help me feel better about things to get through the day, and believe me, I needed it. The voice of Pingu is Carlo Bonomi, and as I alluded earlier, he died this week, and this is about 2 weeks before you'll be watching this, so he died about 10-14 days ago. And as Mark Rain said, he's somebody who really deserves to be put into the surreal section of On the Track. So here he is.
Pingu!
And no, of course I don't own the copyright to that clip, but as far as I'm concerned, fair use does apply in this instance. If not, I'm going to end up having the whole thing demonetised, aren't I? Regular viewers will, I'm sure, remember that last weekend we showed you the first of a 3-part series where Ian Squibs, a friend of the show, goes to Loch Ness in search of some of the places where the most notorious Loch Ness sightings and photographs took place. Here we go with part 2. Yeah, I was always impressed by the McNab photo.
Yes. It's my favourite Loch Ness photo, even if it is not real. Especially with the got a certain gothic charm about it, with the castle and the black and white. Yeah, but anyway, let's give a bit of background into the photo. So, on the 29th of July, 1955, bank manager Peter McNab snapped a photo of something large moving through the water of Loch Ness near Urquhart Castle. So, McNab said of the encounter the following: "I was returning from a holiday in the north with my son and pulled the car on the road just above Urquhart Castle. It was a calm, warm, hazy afternoon. I was all ready to take a shot of Urquhart Castle when my attention was held by a movement in the calm water over to my left. Naturally, I thought of the monster and hurriedly changed my camera lens to a telephoto. As I was doing so, a quick glance showed something black or dark, enormous creature was cruising on the surface. Without a tripod and in a great hurry, I took the shot. I also took a very quick shot with another camera, a fixed focus Kodak, before the creature submerged. My son was busy under the bonnet of the car at the time, and when he looked in response to my shouts, there were just ripples on the water. Several cars and a bus stopped, but they could see nothing and listened to my description and patent disbelief." So we can have a quick look at the photo, Jonathan. So if you have a look and show the viewers that, so we can see it. Loch Ness researcher Roy McCall studied the photo, and he discovered there were differences between the negative of the image and the print that McNab had originally shown the media. Specifically, there was more of the image in the print than there was in the negative. This led him to conclude that the negative had been created by rephotographing a print. In other words, it was clear that the image had been doctored. So, yeah, so that's the background of the photo. A bit disappointing that it's probably a fake, but this was an easier location to find, so I took myself to the road above Urquhart Castle and tried to recreate the P.A. McNab photo. So it was about this spot in July 1955. That's about right. P.A. McNab saw something large breaking the surface just by the tower of Urquhart Castle. So zoomed in there. Looks about right, doesn't it? Unfortunately though, I'm not as lucky as P.A. McNab. There's no monster today, so, but there's the shot.
So if it is a hoax, How do you think he did it?
Well, excuse me, my phone is ringing. Well, it's quite easy to re-photograph, isn't it? That's one of the, especially in those days, get a picture, draw a monster on it, and re-photograph it. I believe that was the method that that Doc Shields used with the Loch Ness Muppet photo. Do you have a bit of insight into that, Jonathan? I believe you're a friend of his.
Yes, he and I have been friends for a long time.
And did he tell the truth about that photo?
He's always told
Or did
me. He's always told me that it is genuine, that he didn't hoax it.
Yeah.
It all depends.
He's...
Do you believe the Wizard of the Western World or not? I'm making no claims one way or the other.
Yes. He said, though, it wasn't a long-necked plesiosaur type creature, did he? He said it was some kind of octopus type thing with an arm, one of the arms of an octopus type creature. Is that right?
Yes, he said that was, as far as I remember, he suggested that would make a plausible explanation for his sighting. But it has to be said, there is absolutely no zoological rationale for these claims. So whether he saw it, whether he didn't see it, whether it's hoaxed, or whether this is just a game of the old surrealist thought game, Exquisite Corpse, I ain't gonna hazard a guess.
Have you spoken to him lately?
No, I haven't spoken to him in some years.
He was also lucky enough to photograph Morgua as well as Nessie.
Yes, I've always been, well, I've not been very impressed with the Morgau photographs.
The Mary F, wasn't it? Who was?
Oh, the Mary F pictures. He's told me the Mary F pictures are fakes, but he wasn't the person who faked them.
What was it? A model of some kind?
No,
I shape, isn't it?
Yeah, I assume that it is like in one of his books, he showed how to fake a picture. It would be with a piece of plate glass and some plasticine on it. But what he did point out was that he wasn't, by a long way, he wasn't the only surrealist who lived in Falmouth at the time. And there was a whole group of surrealist artists who spent quite a lot of that particular summer hoaxing each other and doing these various creatures from Cornish folklore as part of a sort of ongoing anarchist realist art project. He's never told me who actually did the Mary F photographs, although I suspect from other things he said it was a guy called John Gordon who I met once or twice and was a very nice guy. But he, like everybody else, is totally unwilling to put the Mary F photographs into any serious cryptozoological context.
I first saw those photos in the Unexplained magazine of the late 70s, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a good read. That was. Yes, and also that was when I first read about Owlman, where in that magazine, where I think wasn't Doc involved in that as well?
Yes, but not in the way that one might expect. But yes, I first met Doc through my investigations into Owlman. We'll be back in the next episode with the long, complicated and convoluted story of Frank Searle. But first, let's go to East Anglia. And the stories keep on coming. I'm indebted to my lovely stepdaughter Olivia for this latest story, which she sent me this afternoon. And it's a tale of a mystery cat report from Norfolk, which is where she lives. And it has certain very interesting, if not to say intriguing, aspects to it. Have a load of this. Various news outlets, in this case the Norwich Evening News, have reported that a large black beast has been captured on camera slinking through a field near the city. The photographer, Paul Oakley, 44, who works in Norwich, was alarmed to see the creature wandering through the grass off Atlantic Avenue, Sprowston, at about 10 a.m. on Monday, August the 8th. Mr. Oakley says that he is adamant that what he saw was not a cat or a dog, and he whipped out his phone to capture the animal in the flesh. He said, "I've never seen it before, but I'm certain it's definitely not a cat because it was far too big. I don't think it was a dog either. Its tail was the size of the hay bale." However, Kevin Murphy, who runs Norfolk Wildlife Rescue, believes that Mr. Oakley's sighting is unlikely to be a panther. Mr. Murphy said, "The head ratio is far too squat to be a wild carnivore. There appears to be no neck, so the appearance is that of a well-fed or pregnant house cat rather than a Norwich panther. Its running gait appears to be that of a house cat not used to walking on wheat or barley stubble. Big cats would, in their natural behaviour, usually seek cover to move around and avoid exposed open areas. My first impression is that it is a domestic cat, because the tail tip does not curl over enough to be a panther." And on the whole, I tend to agree with Mr. Murphy's analysis of the situation. However, I do want to thank Mr. Oakley for taking the time and effort to film the creature, and I want everybody watching this to know that we do take everybody's sighting seriously, and even when, as is sadly quite often the case, it is a misidentification of a known creature, we still treat the people who made those sightings with the respect that they deserve as people who are still trying to help us push back the boundaries of human knowledge. Like I said at the beginning, now I'm going to tell you why the recent revelations that the Loch Ness Monster might be scientifically proven, which have appeared in the press all around the world, are just a pile of worm gears. Look at these stories. These are just typical. I nicked them off the internet in a spare 20 minutes while I was talking to Computer Boy.
Don't call me Computer Boy!
And they all roughly tell the story, because the accepted wisdom until now has always been that plesiosaurs only lived in salt water. And so that the Loch Ness Monster could not possibly be a plesiosaur because it would have had to live in fresh water. But now, in the Sahara Desert, they have found a series of fossils which appear to be of freshwater plesiosaurs. But does that mean that the Loch Ness Monster is plausible? No, of course it doesn't. No, I should really rephrase that. Does that mean that surviving plesiosaurs, and therefore the identity of the Loch Ness Monster and other lake monsters around the world as being a surviving freshwater plesiosaur is plausible? No, of course not. The fact that they died out 66 million years ago is a pretty good starting point. What it does mean is that the idea of freshwater plesiosaurs are probably plausible. But they still died out about 66 million years ago.
which would make it a bit difficult for them to be traipsing around the Great Glen here in the 21st century. Sadly, this is just another example of what happens when newspapers, and in this case a whole string of newspapers, get hold of a mildly interesting story, sit around at an editorial meeting working out exactly how much sensationalism they can wring from it, and then spout it in the faces of the unsuspecting public. I'm sorry to tell you all that it is no proof of the Loch Ness Monster whatsoever, and anyway I still think the Loch Ness Monster is a giant eel. But I want to say very much sorry to all the people who sent me the stories, who said, "At last, John, all your work's been vindicated. Cryptozoology has been proven to be true because we've now got a proof that the Loch Ness Monster exists." We haven't, I'm afraid. We've just got truth that quite a lot of journalists have praised.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when there's a new show to watch. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the end of the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis, who actually has a fairly thankless task, because whenever he sends me some information about how YouTube videos work and how to, in order to make a YouTube video more popular, you have to appeal to X, Y and Z, only to be greeted by me ranting wildly about how I'm not going to do anything of the sort and why don't I have these people all shot, which seems perfectly reasonable to me, but I think it's a bit unfair on poor Louis. So thank you, Louis, my dear boy. You deserve all the thanks that I can give you. I've been very unwell this week, as you probably know if you read my blogs or look around on the various Facebook pages. I caught food poisoning and I spent several days in bed, and I spent most of this week surviving on small cups of Complan and the tiniest portions of the blandest food that we can manage. In fact, the only thing I've enjoyed eating would be ice cream, although Complan has its upsides, believe it or not. But I want to say a big thank you to Graham Inglis for looking after me. I tell you what, mate, you're a better nurse than I ever was. And to Louis, Miss Maxine, and Harry Wadham for letting me bend your ears when I've been feeling sorry for myself. And to Harry and Phil Bayliss for their work on the magazine, because I have been so hors de combat this week that if it hadn't been for them, the magazine wouldn't have come out. Thank you, my dear friends. Well, I'll be back on Wednesday, and for once I know what's in next Wednesday's show. We're going to be talking about tigers in Hong Kong. And then I'll be back on Saturday. And yes, I know what's going to be in Saturday's show as well. Or at least I hope I do, although we haven't filmed it yet. But as long as Ian Squibs has not had his leg bitten off by a giant shark, and you never know, that sort of thing happens in Britain a lot these days, we're going to be back at Loch Ness, and we're going to be talking about Frank Searle, who's possibly the most notorious and misunderstood of the Loch Ness Monster hunters. Frank Searle, his life, his legacy, and why so many people still hate him to this very day. So, I'm looking forward to that. And if you're there to watch me and I'm there to see you, come on, McCrinnan, get ready. I'll be seeing you.